Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast. Today with Jacob Maggard. Dalton will be back joining me next week to kind of cover these games and, of course, talk about the national championship game, which will be one of the biggest games we've seen in a long time. Decide the winner of a 12-team playoff in the first year of it. Just to open things up here, talk about the games that happened last week, and really we saw some really good games and probably the best games we had seen so far in the playoffs. As the first round, a lot of those games weren't as close as we were hoping they would be. This round showed us some really fun matchups. Talking about the first two teams here, Notre Dame, of course, in their game, kind of dominated in certain aspects of the game. They looked like the better team, and obviously Georgia dealing with the injuries, not having their quarterback. That whole situation was rough, but they didn't look prepared. Notre Dame did. Also, I think Riley Leonard, the way he played on the ground, had 7 rushing first downs in that game, which was a very big thing. Of course, he had the big first down with about 7 minutes left in the game that at that point you thought that's pretty much it. That's going to seal it. And on the other side for Georgia, I don't think that Gunnar Stockton played a bad football game. I think he played pretty good actually. I think that honestly they didn't get the run game going at all. That was something that they've struggled with at times this year. When they haven't got the run game going, they've been an easier team to beat. And no run game at all, and Notre Dame moves on. I think again the defense is really really good. I think that Jeremiah Love injury could be a little bit worrying for this upcoming game, which we'll be talking about in just a second. And so we'll have some updates on that. But again, Notre Dame, obviously one of those teams in this playoff that they've looked pretty strong throughout. Then talk about the other side of the ball here with Penn State. A team that has looked very good. I think that obviously Drew Aller coming back next year, been a big hype around him. He could even end up going to the draft. If he goes out here and wins a national championship, I think the hype around him will be so high that teams will be willing to pick him at the top of the draft. And this playoff run has really done a lot for him. Of course, the big thing with Penn State is they dominate on the ground. They can go to their two backs consistently, and Tyler Warren is just awesome, really representing the Big Ten well. You look at the other two teams that played, of course, be mentioned in a second as well, but Ohio State. Dominant victory over Oregon. Looked like probably the best team in the playoffs so far. I mean, they have looked unstoppable. Their offense scores 40 in both games. Will Howard is playing literally the best football he's played all year in the last two games at the most important time. Their running backs are obviously both pro guys. Very hard to stop them. I mean, it is extremely difficult to stop that offense. They got everything going in that Oregon game, and although Oregon kind of come back a little bit in the second half, it's more because Ohio State was running the ball and try to get out of there with that massive lead that they had throughout the whole game, really. I mean, it instantly blossomed to a 21-0 lead, and it looked like it was over for Oregon very quickly in that game. Just outmatched by Ohio State's intensity. Jack Sawyer, a guy that has to be mentioned on that side of the ball for Ohio State. Defensively, he's their guy. They go to him. They let him make big time plays. His pass rush has been phenomenal in this playoffs. He's been getting to both the quarterbacks that he's faced so far, and it'll be interesting to see if he can get to Ewers as well in that game later on. And last but not least, Texas, the closest game we've had in this entire playoffs. They take a lead early, but Arizona State storms back on the shoulders of Cam Skattebo, who ends up winning the MVP of the game. He was awesome. I mean, not to be remiss, not forget about Cam Skattebo with one of the best performances we've seen in a college football game in a long time. I mean, he threw a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown. He caught, 70, 80 yards worth of receiving yards, almost 200 rushing or close to it. Just phenomenal game. I mean, you're not going to get any better than that. The performance, they can't ask for any more out of them. And they did everything they could to win that one. They were just a little bit overmatched as well. Texas coming down to that 4th and 12, where Arizona State, rushed Ewers, and he had all day. I mean, it was really good blocking up front. Found the end zone, got a win for Texas to move on to this playoffs. But again, that's kind of the overall theme with these teams, is they're all playing like the best that they've played all year, and maybe some shaky bits here and there, but really good performances from everybody. After wrapping up those games, I think the next thing to talk about here would be Tech obviously playing in their bowl game against Minnesota, and really honestly, that was a show out there to kind of see if we got some guys for next year, younger players that really got to go out there and play. I think you look at that game, you could tell the offensive line was tore apart. I mean, we had transfers, we had guys opting out, not playing, and they really couldn't protect the two quarterbacks at all. But you did still see some flashes from some guys. I think defensively, we saw some performances that were very impressive, and some of those guys are going to be key pieces of next year's team. Dante Lovett, especially, going to be a key piece. I think Quentin Reddish can grab some really big minutes next year. Offensively, I think Brody Adams definitely has a chance to be a star receiver next year for this team. Although he'll only be a redshirt freshman, the potential is definitely there for him to be, the X or the wide receiver on the outside. And overall, I don't think that that's a showing of how Pop can play next year. I think it's going to be a really fun competition in the offseason to see is it Drones, is it Pop, who gets the starting job next year? Because those are the two guys, and it's going to be really relying on those two guys to see how they do in the spring training or spring session, spring games, and see who takes that job coming into next year. I think Drones definitely has the upper hand with being the older guy that's been here, done that. But I think Pop can definitely compete for that job. Another key part of this is Tech has played the portal extremely well. I think that they've done a great job. On3 has them in the top 20 in transfer portal classes. They've added tons of help in the secondary. They've added tons of help on the offensive line. They've greatly improved that part of the game, which is the biggest issue that they had all year was the offensive line. And I think Matt Moore's got more to come. I think he's going to add more. I think the potential is definitely there for some really good guys to come in and change this team completely. And again, I think that they've added running back help was big because you're losing Tootin, who's been the best player Prize had. You got to add something there too, and I think they've done a good job addressing that. And they have a lot of potential. Of course, can't dream like we did last year and get our hopes a little bit too high. But again, I think that they could be a decent football team next year. Not a whole lot more to say. John Love, give him props. Awesome field goal in that bowl game, 60-yarder, broke the Duke's Mayo Bowl record and was very close to Tech's record. He's now second all time behind a 61-yard field goal. Again, I think there's a lot of potential on the team. It's a young team, still showing. A lot of these young guys are guys that they've brought in with this coaching staff. So still tons of potential with those dudes. Next, moving into it, we might as well talk about these playoff games because this is it. The Final Four. This is where we would have been if we were still in our old four-team format. And Notre Dame and the Penn State Nittany Lions. This game is going to be very fun. I think that this is two of the best defenses left in the playoffs, if not the two best defenses left. The Capital One Orange Bowl, of course, being played at Hard Rock Stadium. I think that both of these teams have a very key injury. I think that could play a part in this game. I think both of these teams want to run the ball, and Notre Dame even more than Penn State, and Penn State runs it a lot. You look at Notre Dame, you look at the quarterback, Riley Leonard, star player, has been all year, done a lot of his work on the ground. It's going to be key that they get both of those things going. The only game he was held under 30 rushing yards all year, NIU. Guess what they did? They lost. So it's key to get Riley Leonard going. Use his rushing ability to open up the pass game a little bit, and on top of that, open up a little bit of the other options that they have, including their start back and Jeremiah Love, which we'll talk about in a second. On the other side for Penn State, Drew Aller, 3,100-yard passer. Again, I think he would be the number one quarterback in this potential upcoming draft class if he were to enter. So I think that speaking highly of him, I think he's the best quarterback left in the playoffs. I think that it's very interesting to see what Penn State will do because they can pass. They can pass very well. Tyler Warren, superstar receiver. Other guys that have, stepped it up in the playoffs. Of course, Warren being the tight end. And again, 24 touchdowns on the season. If he opens it up a little bit more, I mean, they're scary because they can pass. They can run really well. And he can even move a little bit. He's showed that in the playoffs some, escaping, on third downs and creating plays with his legs. You look at the running backs in this matchup. Very key moment was when Jeremiah Love got injured last week. It is not one of those simple injuries. This is a thing that could hold him back. This could hinder him in this game. He could not play. If he doesn't, that's obviously a massive blow to Notre Dame. Their star back, the guy that they've relied on. We talked about all year how important he is to the team. Of course, 1,000-yard rusher, 16 touchdowns. When he's played in the playoffs, he's looked awesome, but that injury is scary. Now, they do have an update on him saying that they think he will play. Marcus Freeman has said he's sure he'll play. It's just what will we get out of him? I'm going to be interested to see because Jadarian Price is still a good running back behind him. He played well in the moments that he had to play last week, and I think that if Jadarian Price is the starting running back, that obviously is a massive disadvantage, but they still have a guy that can get things done. They don't have to just go away from the running game with him. On the other side for Penn State, they have two running backs. They have the royalty that if one went down, they got another one because Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, two of the best running backs in college football on the same team. Both of these guys, again, future NFL players. And Penn State's going to look to run the rock. They're going to look to dominate that facet of the game, control clock, control the ball in general, keep it out of Notre Dame's hands. And if they can run up the middle, if they can run to the outside, it's going to be very hard to stop them. Notre Dame is known for stopping that rush attack, and if they do it well, this is a beatable team. So we'll see, which defense does a better job at defending the other team's rushing ability. You look at the receivers, of course, for Notre Dame, Beau Collins, again, the leader on the year, but the guy that's really stepped up in the playoffs is Jordan Faison. He's been the target. They started looking at him a lot. Again, this guy was a lacrosse national champion, so he's already an athlete and has done it in that sport. Imagine he can get two championships in this year of his college career. would be pretty awesome. He's been really good in the playoffs. They're going to look for him a lot. I think again, if Jeremiah Love's healthy, they'll obviously use him in the passing game. On the other side for Penn State, I mean, it is the dominant attack of Tyler Warren. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's the best tight end in college football, in my personal opinion. 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, almost that 100 receptions mark, which I think he definitely hits in this game. They have to go to him. They have to be able to find him. And if you're Notre Dame, you have to be able to stop him because if you don't, they're impossible to beat. If they're running the ball well and they're finding Tyler Warren, I don't see how you stop this offense. So it'll be interesting which defense steps up. Again, that's the thing we've also talked about with these two teams. Very good defenses on both sides. Notre Dame, in my opinion, the best, most athletic defense. And then, of course, Penn State. They've been pretty tough in this playoffs. They've held everybody, under 20 points in the playoff games. They've been very good all year. Which defense will step up? I want to make a pick here. Of course, just me this week making these picks, so it's all laying on me for the channel. I I think that the injuries on both sides of the ball, of course, Abdul Carter, he is expected to play for Penn State. That would be a big thing if he gets hurt in this game and doesn't play. I just think Penn State's too hot right now. I think Penn State will get it done. I think that they have just a little bit better team. But again, I think this game's gonna be super close. I think either one can, of course, win this game, and that's why they're here. They're two of the best four teams in the country. But I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to take the better quarterback in Drew Aller. I'm going to take the team that does have their star players on offense. And if Abdul Carter plays and just adds onto that defense as well, I think Penn State will get it done here. Next game here, Ohio State versus Texas in a big time game, of course. It is the Cotton Bowl taking place in Texas. If that doesn't help Texas, I don't know what will. The fans should be there. They should show up. They should be more than 50-50. And that's obviously going to be a slight advantage in their favor because they're going to get more of a home field atmosphere, more of a home field environment, and should help with, the crowd being lower when they're on offense and then really going crazy when Ohio State gets the ball. Could be the thing that, tips this game over the edge in their favor. You look at stats, of course, Ohio State, Will Howard. It's really not talk about the season. It's talk about the playoffs. He's been phenomenal in the playoffs, as well as Jeremiah Smith, of course. Arguably looked like the best receiver in college football the last 2 weeks. But Will Howard, I mean, you can't ask for more out of the guy. The veteran quarterback that's doing what he was expected to do when he got here. He's the story of the game. If they get him going again, it's just hard to beat that offense. When Will Howard's rolling, they can then run the ball better. They're very scary. On the other side for Texas, Quinn Ewers. This is it. I mean, for Quinn, realistically, I've seen a lot of things saying that Quinn's probably either going to the draft or entering the portal. They want to move to Arch Manning. If I'm Quinn Ewers, I'm proving something to everybody. I'm proving that I'm a national championship level quarterback. I'm proving that I deserve to be in the league next year or leading this team again. But he's got a lot to prove. He's been good this year. He's looked very good in the playoffs. He's done the right things. And of course, the play he made last week to win the game in overtime against Arizona State, one of the biggest plays we've seen all year. The rushing attack will obviously be important for both of these teams as well. I think that the big key of this game is, does Ohio State get TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins going? They need them both to be producing at a high level. Of course, Quinshon Judkins had the big rush last week. They got him a big time touchdown. They were dominating that game though against Oregon, and really Ohio State was just flowing offensively really well. Honestly, it didn't look hard for them in that game. Until the second half, they didn't slow down. And I think realistically, they only slowed down to get out of that game quicker and kind of rest their guys a little bit. And on the other side for Texas, of course, Quintravion Wisner, been very good in the playoffs, but it's hit or miss with him this season. He's had games where he's been really, really good, and then games where he hasn't has been as strong. And the games that he's been running really well, that they've been dominant. And of course, Jalen Blue providing them with a lot of consistency in the playoffs as well. Had a massive game in the first game of the playoffs, really breaking off some big runs. He's kind of the change of pace back, gives you a real speed threat to take one to the house on a big time carry. Of course, you talk past that, you look at the receiving stats. Ohio State has the best passing attack in the entire country. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate. I mean, the list just goes on. And they use their backs well in the passing game as well. It's honestly the hardest offense in the country to stop when they're flowing right. And realistically, the teams that they've lost to, it's because they beat themselves. They game plan incorrectly. I think that's a thing with Ryan Day as a coach. He's been criticized for that many a times. Not having good game plans, and if they show up without a good game plan against Texas, they will lose this game. So they need to get those guys going. Of course, like I said, Jeremiah Smith, arguably the best receiver in the entire country right now. And on the other side for Texas, of course, Matthew Golden, very important in the receiving game. But on top of that, they really want to go to Gunnar Helm a lot in this game. And then, of course, the young guy in Ryan Wingo. But the big story is because Isaiah Bond be a real threat in this game. I mean, he just come back from an injury. He was supposed to be one of the best receivers in the entire country. He's one of the fastest receivers in the country, but he really hasn't produced at a high level this year for them. If they can get Isaiah Bond going, they could have a really scary passing attack, especially with Ewers playing at his best. And then obviously you talk about the defenses here. Ohio State's isn't as good as Texas's. They probably have the weakest defense left in the playoffs, but it's not a bad defense by any means. It's still a very good defense. Texas, just the plays they've been making as a defense to get off the field and win games. I mean, you had the interception to beat Arizona State at the very end, and of course they have a Jim Thorpe winner at corner. It is a very deep defense. They have players at every position that can come in and provide depth. And if somebody goes down, they have replacements. That's the biggest story with Texas is all year they've had the ability to just put other guys in, plug and play, and be as good as they were before. Going to make a pick here. I think a factor that could play into this game would be the Texas getting this game in the home state. They don't have to travel. Their fans should travel well. I just think that right now Ohio State might be the hottest team in the entire country. The way that they've blown out the last two teams they've played, these are playoff teams that everybody thought were pretty good teams, and they made it look easy. I think that Texas has the better head coach. I think Sarkisian is a guy that can win a game from his defensive game plan. And although I think Ohio State's the hottest team in the country, I think Texas takes this game. I think Texas is they have everything that they need to do to win this game. I think that Quinn Ewers, again, he's proving something to the world. He has to prove himself, which, injuries have kind of set him back. I think this is the game he comes out. He has a great game. I think they get the run game going. I think that their defense is good enough to stop Ohio State's passing attack. And I think that Howard may make one of those mistakes or Ryan Day may not have the best game plan. And Texas takes this one. That's going to wrap it up for this week. Of course, these two games are very important. Two of the most important games in the season. Of course, we're talking about the Final Four, the best four teams left in the entire country. And I think we're going to narrow it down to our national championship contenders and the two that I've made picks with this week. Again, Dalton will be back with us next week so we can talk national championship. And of course, can't wait for that game too. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. I plan on doing some more solo coverage with some draft stuff. I want to look at the draft. I want to analyze players and kind of give some opinions that I have. And we'll obviously be releasing a full mock draft at some point with the first and maybe the second round between me and Dalton and talk about players that we like in the upcoming NFL draft. Of course, me as a Titans fan, happy to have the first overall pick. Not happy to be bad, though. So we need to get some things right. We'll see what they do with that. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us and peace.